My name's Chris Fahey. I'm the owner of AG Payroll. Today's webinar is going to be about the upcoming UK Employment Rights Bill and umbrella legislation. So the key to this today is just give you guys a bit of an overview of what the legislation changes are going to be, what's going to be involved in them, and hopefully give you some tips to take away from this on some actions that you have to be working on over the next few months. But they'll be coming in. They'll both be getting phased in as of 2026. So yeah, just a brief introduction from about myself. So again, my name's Chris Fahey. I've been working in the payroll sector now for around about 20 years. I've worked for some of the big payroll companies in the market, Paystream and Parasol being two of them. I decided 2.5 years ago to set up my own payroll company. So AG Payroll, we're based in Glasgow, but we deal with clients all over the UK. Things are going well. We're sort of 30 million plus turnover. We don't just do UK payroll, we do international payroll as well. So hopefully know what I'm talking about. I've lived and breathed this industry now for the last 20 years, but these two legislation changes are going to be two of the biggest that are going to affect not just payroll companies, but also recruitment agencies. So it's very important that you guys are aware of this. So what I thought I'd start with is just giving you a bit of background on how I got into the payroll sector. It's a bit of an unusual one. Click onto the first slide. Apologies for the black and white grainy photograph here, but it's the only one I have at that time. I started out at 17 as a footballer. I played for Celtic. I signed full time with Celtic. I was actually the Scotland under-18s goalkeeper at the time as well, so I thought that was going to be my life. I was going to be rich and famous, play for Celtic, and that's it. I was going to live the dream. At the end of that season, I got the call into the office from the youth team manager, like 99% of young players do at these big teams, and get told that I was going to get released. So hit me with like a bit of a sledgehammer. My whole life was going to be football, and I had it all mapped out. I didn't have a plan B, so I had some good people around me at the time, and they advised me to go to university. So I went to university, Glasgow Caledonian University, and I got my business degree. So at 21, I came out of university with a business degree and managed to get another contract to go back into football full time. But at 21, I just got this business degree, and I said to the manager of the team, it was Albion Rovers, that's me, bottom left there, a lot younger and a few stone lighter. And I said to him, I've got this business degree, so I want to do something with it. So he, really good guy, John McVeigh, said, well, why don't you become the club's commercial manager? So I did. I played football in the morning, trained with the team, and then in the afternoon, I was the club's commercial manager. So I sold the trackside advertising, the hospitality, went round all the pubs and clubs in Coatbridge, selling all of that. So at 21, I became the youngest ever commercial manager in Scottish football history. Still to this day, that's the case. Sounds very glamorous, but if you know what Albion Rovers are as a club, they're a very lower league club. The club's been about for 130 years. The stadium's not changed in, I think, 130 years. So it was quite a difficult gig trying to sell trackside advertising and hospitality for them. But it was good. It was a good grounding into sales. I did that for 4 years. I was full-time with the football and did the commercial manager duties in the afternoon. I got to 25, realised I wasn't going to be the next Peter Schmeichel, decided to get a real job, and that's when I went into payroll as a business development manager for a company called NWM. Still continued to play football part-time, so I played football for 18, 19 years in League One, League Two with Stranraer, Stenhousemuir, Raith Rovers, Clyde, numerous teams in the lower league. So combined the part-time football with the full-time payroll duties. So that's just a bit of background about how I got into payroll. It's a bit unusual, bit of an unusual story. So these days I'm not involved in football. I've got the closest I come to coaching is my 5-year-old and 9-year-old. Little boy Aiden at 5 and little girl Lola at 9. So It's not really coaching, it's more like babysitting and herding cats at that age, but that's my involvement in football. Too busy with running the payroll company and keeping on top of all this compliance. So this is my team, some of my team anyway. We partner, our charity of choice is a Scottish mental health charity called Back On Side. It sort of goes full circle to my first slide with the Celtic photograph, where what Back On Side do, they're a mental health charity and they mainly help footballers that have mental health issues. So a lot of young players that have been released by football clubs and they don't have a plan B and they have some severe mental health problems after that. If you go onto Instagram or any social media platform, you'll see some of the heartbreaking stories for Back On Side. It's a fantastic charity. So decided to get involved in that just over a year ago. That's us at the top of Ben Nevis. It was 27 degrees that day. It was one of the hardest things I think we've ever done, but we did it. And we've walked from Glasgow to Loch Lomond, which was arguably harder than Ben Nevis with the blisters, etc. And I also helped organise a charity ball for Back On Side. So over the last year, I think we've raised just over £100,000 for the charity, and it's a charity that's close to our heart. So AG Payroll, as I mentioned at the start, we do UK and international payroll. In the UK, we do umbrella, limited company, CIS, PAYE bureau, and we also can provide employed and self-employed solutions in over 160 countries worldwide. So it's important dealing with so many countries and so many different models that we are fully compliant. So that's why we're up to speed with all the legislation changes that are happening, not just in the UK, but also internationally as well. Yeah, and as I said, I set the company up 2.5 years ago. One of the things I wanted to do was make sure the company was 100% compliant. There's so many uncompliant payroll companies in our sector, and I've heard of so many horror stories. I wanted to make sure right from the start that I did things right. I've got a wife and 3 kids, and the last thing I wanted to do was have any HMRC investigations or anything like that. I wanted to make sure I could sleep at night. So the first thing I did was get our SafeRec certification. So SafeRec's one of the payroll industry accreditations, and it took us 9 months to do that, but it's the best thing we've done as a business. SafeRec integrates with my payroll software system, and it also integrates with my government gateway system. So it makes sure that all the deductions that we make are fully compliant. It's independently audited in real time. And also it checks our HMRC government gateway to make sure that all the taxes that we are supposed to pay have been paid. And at the end of the month, I'll talk more about this later, but the agencies that we work with get a monthly report that guarantees the compliance in the supply chain. We're pre-TIM approved. From the limited company side of things, we get all our IR35 assessments. We pass them on to Kingsbridge. Again, that's all fully insured as well. And also our payroll software system integrates with HMRC and is HMRC approved. So what that means is the HMRC's looked at all of our calculations and said that they're 100% compliant and they are correct. So that's something else that's a bit of a badge of honour for us. And the reason the FCSA badge is on there is we're going through, there's 3 industry accreditations. There's SafeRec, Professional Passport and FCSA. So we're going through our FCSA accreditation at the moment. So by November, we'll be one of the only payroll companies in the industry that have 2 of the big badges of accreditation, which will be SafeRec and FCSA. But we feel in the current market as if that's something we're happy to invest in, because it's something a good compliant payroll company is going to have come next year. And I'll go into a bit more detail on that. So the first thing that we'll touch on is the UK Employment Rights Bill. As I said, there's 2 pieces of legislation that are coming in next year, the Employment Rights Bill and also the umbrella legislation. So this one we thought was going to be a bit more hard hitting. It was going to put a lot more stress on agencies, because the rumours were that everything was going to be brought into play at the start of 2026. They've announced it over the last few weeks that it is coming in. but it's going to be phased over 2 years. So you've got over 2026, 2027, there's different rates that will be coming in, but you will have a bit more time to get your processes in place, and we'll go into a bit more detail on that and what they are. So the Employment Rights Bill is basically a bill that gives temp and contractors the same rights as permanent employees. So the Labour government have talked about this for years, and it's something that they're bringing into play to make sure that temp and contractors are given the rights that they feel as if they've not had in the past. So the reason they're bringing these in, this bill in, is that over the last few years, there's been some high-profile cases where some companies have abused temporary workers. There was the Uber case in 2021 and the Deliveroo case in 2023, where they had the workers on 0-hour contracts. Labour didn't like that. They made lots of noises about it and put it in their manifesto and said that whenever they get into government, then they're going to make some changes on that, because effectively these workers were given no rights, and that's something that they've done. The other one was the P&O ferry dismissals, where P&O were £100 million in debt at the time. The way of them getting out of that is they made 800 employees unemployed, and they replaced them with agency staff. But instead of giving the agency staff the equivalent wages that the permanent employees got, they gave them on average an average hourly rate of £7.50 per hour, so less than minimum wage, again, just to get themselves out of that debt. So that was something that Labour made lots of noise about. As soon as we come into power, we're going to do something about it, and they have. So the bill is going to come in, as I said, over the next 2 years, and here's the main areas that it's going to look at. So temporary workers or contractors are going to get day one rights. They will get statutory sick pay from day one, and they'll get unfair dismissal rights from day one. There's an interest in the meat on the bones are going to come around this. They're going to put some more information out there near the end of the year. It's going to get royal assent by November, so we'll get more details around the examples on this. But one of the examples that I've been told around the day one rights on unfair dismissal is that if a temporary worker is offered a role and they're due to start on the Monday, but then that role gets pulled, and say the contract was for 6 months, the agency and the end client will still be on the hook for paying that contractor for the 6 months. So it's important that everything is documented, and again, there'll be more meat on the bones around that as well. But the contractors, if they've been offered a job, even if it's a temporary job and it's for a period of time, they will be they'll be able to take that to tribunal to honour that. Flexible working is default. So if a worker wants to work from home, right now you can say to a temporary worker or a contractor, no, you can't. Under the new legislation, you can say no, but you have to have a reason for it, and it has to be documented. 0-hour contracts are not going to be a thing anymore. It's going to be guaranteed hours contracts. So the way that will work is that when you place a temporary worker or a contractor, you're going to have to agree a minimum amount of what hours that they work per week. So for example, if you agree with a worker they're going to work 16 hours a week, you have to review that every 12 weeks. And if you review that after 12 weeks and the workers only averaged about 12 hours a week, you have to make sure that those they're compensated for that, or else you renew the contract and you revise that contract to make sure that it's 12 hours they're guaranteed in a week. If you don't do that, then again, that'll be something that they'll be able to take to tribunal. There'll be a ban on fire and rehire practices, which goes back to the P&O ferry dismissals. That will be illegal, and there'll be statutory sick pay now from day one of illness. So it'll be capped at 80% of salary, or £118.75 per week. There'll be extended tribunal time limits, so workers, temporary or contractors, will be able to take tribunals up to 6 months after they've finished an assignment. They reckon that the number of tribunals is going to increase by tenfold over the next 2 to 3 years on the back of this bill. So there'll be a lot more ambulance chaser companies that you'll see adverts out there that'll be trying to encourage temporary workers and contractors to take out these tribunals. So just be aware of that. The new Fair Work Agency is a government body that's going to be formed, and they'll be up and running by April next year. And they're going to be effectively the government body that's going to look after the temporary workers and contractors, and any complaints will go to them, and they'll just make sure that the workers are looked after. So I talked about the timeline. So that's the timeline there. Labour come into power, and straight away they put this bill through the House of Lords. It'll be given royal assent by the end of 2025. So it'll become the Employment Rights Act rather than the Employment Rights Bill. And then as of April next year, the Fair Work Agency will be formed, and the first part of the bill, or the act that it will be by the time April comes in, will be the day one rights on paternity pay and also the statutory sick pay. And the other parts will come in October 26, and the rest come in 2027. So you have got a bit of time to get your head around this. So what does this mean for agencies? There'll be higher compliance expectations. So every new placement, whether it's temp or perm, there's now a risk. So you have to make sure you have processes in place and that everything is documented. You'll have to review your contracts. The contracts that you have will have to mention the Employment Rights Bill in there. So you'll have to have them reviewed and looked at. Zero-hour models will just not be compliant anymore. So if you do have any workers on zero-hour models, which I don't think many have, then make sure you move away from that. And what some agencies are doing is moving their PAYE or their temp workers to umbrella companies, because the umbrella companies employ the contractors. So you're effectively passing on the risk to the umbrella company, and the umbrella company then become the employer, and then they're the ones that have to do all these checks on the workers. It's important that you make sure your managers are up to speed and they're trained on this, because they're the ones that will be dealing with the flexible working requests, the grievance procedures, etc. So make sure they're up to speed on it. And there's going to be a higher tribunal risk. As I said, they reckon that the amount of tribunals is going to increase tenfold. So there's some actions there on the right-hand side that I've just mentioned. Make sure the contracts are audited, look at your procedures, train the consultants, look at the models that you're working with at the moment. Consider umbrella. Potentially that could be get a jail-free card, but you could just basically pass on the liability and the risk to an umbrella company. And if you are going to use an umbrella company, make sure it's an accredited payroll company with one of the badges that I spoke at the start, the FCSA Professional Passport or SafeRec. So that's a summary of the Employment Rights Bill. As I said, I think that one's going to be okay. I think agencies are going to get their head around that, and they'll have a bit of time to have a look at it and make sure everything's in place. This new umbrella legislation that's coming in April 2026 is the one that agencies have to set up, they have to be aware of, because the consequences of not listening and not doing anything about this are, without being too dramatic, catastrophic, because potentially this could close your business down. And there's also a part of this where directors and senior managers of companies could get criminal convictions if they don't adhere to this. So this one's very important that you're aware of, and you jump on this one straight away. So just to give an idea of the size of the temporary marketplace, there's around 700,000 temps or contractors that are paid through umbrella companies at the moment, and around 300 plus temp contractors that are paid agency PAYE. So HMRC want to ensure that they're getting all the PAYE tax and all the national insurance contributions for all of these contractors and temps. So in our industry at the moment, it's a bit like the Wild West. It's unregulated. We've been crying out for the industry to be regulated for years. I suppose like the Wild West, there's good guys and bad guys. The good guys will be your accredited payroll companies, the ones that are SafeRec accredited, FCSA accredited, professional passport accredited, that pay all the taxes and pay everything in full. The bad guys are the non-compliant payroll companies. Mostly what they are is mini umbrella companies where they're using tax loopholes, a lot of grey areas, and they are not paying the full tax for the workers. So the way many umbrella companies work is that they set up loads of mini companies, and they use the flat rate VAT threshold to give them some benefits on the employer's NI, and they make savings on the employer's NI. What they usually do is split those savings with the agency owners and directors, and it's a way of agencies making extra revenue through through the mini umbrella company not paying the full taxes. Now that's going to be completely illegal and uncompliant as of April 2026, and the consequences, again, we'll go into that, but they're going to be very, very significant. So what the legislation says is that as of April 2026, if you're an agency and you're using an umbrella company, then at the moment the liability sits with the umbrella company. As of April 2026, there's going to be joint and several liability. So that means that not just the umbrella company, but the agency is on the hook for any unpaid taxes and national insurance contributions. So it's important. An agency can't just say, oh, it's the umbrella company's responsibility. You have to be aware that HMRC will come after you if there's any tax shortfall. If there's not an umbrella company on the hook, then this legislation has actually pulled another area, another pool of contractors or temps into the legislation, sort of just by mistake. But any temps or contractors who are agency PAYE, if a payroll company isn't in the hook, it's agency PAYE contractors, and if there's an end client, it's the agency and the end client that's on the hook for any unpaid taxes. So again, that might be something that your end clients might push back on. They might ask you to use umbrella companies just to take them out of the loop for any risk of any unpaid taxes. But at the moment, the way the legislation sits, if there's not a payroll company in the supply chain, then it's the agency and the end client that's on the hook for any unpaid taxes. And if there's a neutral vendor or a master vendor in the chain, and there's also an umbrella company, then the liability will sit with the umbrella company and the neutral vendor or master vendor. It won't sit with the agency. But if there's not a payroll company in the supply chain, it'll be the neutral vendor and master vendor and the end client that will be on the hook. So I think in that scenario, there'll be more neutral vendors that will be insisting on agencies using umbrella companies, because ultimately their job is to keep the end client safe. So they'll want to take the end client out of the risk chain there. So that's the sort of different examples of who's at risk and what's coming up in April 2026. So the government basically wants all these taxes in. The reason is that, again, it's been a bit like the Wild West, and there's been no sort of teeth or no consequences to agencies using non-compliant payroll companies. And if agencies do ignore this legislation, then potentially this could put them out of business, and directors and senior managers, as I said, could be criminally prosecuted. I'll go into a bit more detail on that later on. So what does an agency have to do to protect themselves? I keep going on about this, but they have to work with a SafeRec, FCSA, or professional passport approved umbrella company. If you don't, then you're rolling the dice. You're putting yourself on the radar. HMRC like low-hanging fruit, and they will go after agencies that are using payroll companies that are not SafeRec, FCSA or professional passport approved. So you're just putting your head above the parapet and potentially putting yourself at risk of an HMRC investigation. So at the moment, AG Payroll, we're SafeRec certified. We already exceed these standards, and we're already working at a higher level of compliance. So at the moment, if you went with AG Payroll, then we're already fully covered under the new legislation. That would give you the peace of mind on that. And as I said, working with an unaccredited, non-accredited payroll company is opening the doors for an HMRC investigation, a tax bill, reputational damage, and potential jail time. And that's the part, I think that last part is the bit that just, if I was an agency owner and I was thinking about potentially taking a risk and using a mini umbrella company, that's the bit I'd be like, no chance, it's just not worth it. So they realise that as well. There's been hundreds of millions of pounds worth of taxes lost due to the use of mini umbrella companies, so that's why they came down so hard in this piece of legislation. So just to sort of go over again, and under the previous system, umbrella companies were responsible for the PAYE and national insurance contributions and compliance. Under the new legislation, it will be the agencies and the umbrella company that will be jointly responsible for the tax compliance. If an umbrella company isn't involved, then it will be the end client and the agency that will be liable. Under the previous system, the compliance risk, agencies could rely on umbrella companies to deal with all the compliance and deal with all the taxes because there was no risk to the agencies. Now the agencies must, if HMRC come and ask the agency, how do you know your umbrella partner are compliant? You must prove that. So it's not, you must have evidence of due diligence processes, etc. So agencies must prove that. So it's not acceptable anymore just to pass that on to umbrella companies. The agencies have to prove that to HMRC. And previously it was the employment agency standards that regulated agencies only, and now this Fair Work agency that's coming in April 2026, they'll look after umbrella companies, and they'll look at umbrella companies and agencies and make sure everybody's doing things compliantly. So I've mentioned it a few times, but I can't sort of mention it enough. The risk of using non-compliant payroll companies, the number one risk is that one in the top left-hand corner. That's the official explanation on it. So up to 2 years imprisonment, personal criminal liability for senior managers of an agency. A senior manager is defined as directors, managers, partners, and shadow directors. So even if you're not a director of an agency and you're a manager of an agency, but you know that there's an uncompliant payroll model happening in your agency, you could, under this legislation, potentially face imprisonment. So it's important, very important, that you don't work with any non-compliant payroll companies come April 2026. Obviously, you've got your legal and financial penalties where you're potentially on the hook for the unpaid taxes. There's a risk of fines. Unlimited fines is the way they've described it in the paper, and there's joint and several liability between yourself and the payroll company or the agency and the end client. And again, reputational damage is a big one, because HMRC, what they're doing now is they have a list of uncompliant agencies and payroll companies that they like to put out there, and this is what they're going to do with this. They'll end up putting your agency's name out there and saying that you've been doing things uncompliantly, which again, if your clients get wind of, then potentially could be kicked off of PSLs. If you're on a public sector contract, you'll be kicked off of that straight away. So that's just not worth the risk. And the reputational damage could potentially come with your contractors, because the contractors could be left with tax bills. If the payroll company you've been using doesn't pay the tax on their behalf, they could be left with a tax bill as well. So again, you could have workers out there on the various social media forums bad-mouthing your company, which is not what you need. And also, if you open up the door to HMRC, there could be a lengthy HMRC investigation, which again, nobody wants. So that's the risk of potentially using uncompliant payroll companies come next year. So What's the requirements for the agencies? Again, sort of repeating myself a wee bit here, but it's important to understand that you can't shift the liability on this. The agency is on the hook here. You can't pass the liability for this piece of legislation onto the umbrella company. You have to make sure you do your own due diligence. You have to do background checks on the payroll companies. You have to look for that accreditation, and you have to make sure that you do regular reviews of the payroll companies that you engage with. You have to look at the contracts that you have with your payroll companies, and also the contracts that you have with your clients, and they all have to make sure that everyone in the chain is paying their taxes. So again, that's something you have to review. With regards to contractors, you should be doing this, but I know there's a lot of agencies that aren't doing this at the moment. But this is something HMRC will ask you for if they come in and ask for evidence. They'll ask to see copies of your key information documents. The reason why the key information document becomes so important is that the key information document shows a breakdown of the contractor's pay. It shows all the deductions. If there's a non-compliant payroll company, then you'll soon be able to tell they're non-compliant by the deductions that they're making or not making on the payslip. So the key information documents are a very important document to make sure that you are compliant with these changes. At AG Payroll, we do the key information documents for our agencies, and we send them out on behalf of the agency. So that's something we do to help with the admin side of things. Financial preparation. So just understand the risk. I said there's huge risk there for the tax liabilities. And the record keeping is just making sure that you're doing your due diligence, and you're making sure that what if HMRC do ask the question, how compliant we are and what are we doing to make sure we're fully compliant with the payroll companies. So have an audit trail, have various documents, have various processes documented, but I'll go into a bit more detail about what you can do on that a bit later on. So the key messages for agencies are: don't assume that it's sorted. Don't assume that the umbrella company has got everything covered. Do your own due diligence. The onus is now on you as an agency to make sure that you are fully compliant. So just make sure you're on the front foot with this. Act now and don't wait. So the clients that you're dealing with, so we have HMRC will be asking agencies questions. They'll be speaking to payroll companies, but they'll also be speaking to your clients as well. So HMRC, one of the big things about HMRC, they want to see supply chain due diligence, and that's something they ask compliance directors and legal directors of your clients. How can you guarantee supply chain due diligence? So if you're on the front foot with us and you're talking to your clients about how compliant you are, you can guarantee supply chain due diligence, then that'll put you ahead of some of your competitors out of there, and your clients will love that. Right now, being fully compliant is going to win you more business than doing anything sort of sexy and anything sort of in the grey areas, because again, the consequences are so severe in this legislation. Keep reiterating it, but what a compliant payroll company that said AG Payroll or SafeRec certified, about to be FCSA certified as well. So make sure they've got one of those FCSA, SafeRec or professional passport accreditations, and just stay up to speed on this legislation. There is going to be more meat on the bones over the coming months. We've set up a LinkedIn group. I'll put the details of it at the end, but any updates on the Employment Rights Bill and the umbrella legislation we'll put on there. And how do we mitigate the risk at AG Payroll? So as I talked about at the start, we're SafeRec certified, so that integrates with SafeRec's an independent auditor that integrates with our payroll software, so it makes sure that all the deductions we make are fully compliant, and also integrates with our HMRC government gateway, so make sure that all the taxes have been paid. So if that's the case, then there's zero risk under the new legislation. So there wouldn't be any joint and several liability in this case, because all taxes would be paid and there would be an audit trail for that. That is proven by we give, or SafeRec send out a monthly report. I'll go into a bit more detail on that monthly report and SafeRec insurance policy, because I think that's going to be key to give agencies peace of mind in this legislation. We give every agency a key information document, as I mentioned, which gives the full payslip breakdown. Our fees and our margins is the only way that we make money. So we're not making any money off of employers' NI or anything like that. It's just basically there's clear cost structures and no hidden fees. And if you need any reports, if HMRC do come and they ask you, can you give us some proof that there is full compliance in the supply chain, then we can help you with any reports on that. As a company, we've got 40 plus years experience in the payroll sector, so we like to know we know what we're talking about, and we've got a dedicated support team that can help with any compliance or admin queries as well. So I touched on there on the SafeRec monthly report and insurance policy, but I think this could be a silver bullet for agencies, that you'll be asked by HMRC, if you're using an umbrella company, how can you prove that you are fully compliant? Now, what SafeRec do, as I said, they provide this monthly compliance report that guarantees that all deductions have been made, they've all been made correctly, and it gives a breakdown of every contractor that are through, hopefully, AG Payroll. But if you're using any other payroll company that's SafeRec certified, then it'll give a full breakdown of all your contractors, and it'll ensure that all taxes, all the relevant deductions have been made. It also integrates with HMRC Government Gateway, so it ensures that all the taxes have been made on those contractors as well. And all of that is put into a monthly report, and that is a guarantee of supply chain compliance that you can send out to your clients. If your client says, say to you, how can you prove that you're compliant? You send them that monthly report, and that goes above and beyond what anyone else. So FCSA don't do that at the moment, the Professional Passport don't do that. So if you send them that, then that keeps your end client happy. But also if HMRC come and ask the question, then you can show them that, and that'll keep them happy as well. The other part of SafeRec's accreditation, which is a bit different to the rest, is that they're going to provide an insurance policy around this legislation. So any payroll company who is SafeRec certified, if anything happens to, for example, AG Payroll, and we don't pay the taxes, under the new legislation, there'll be joint and several liability. The insurance policy will cover any tax bill that comes in, and it'll cover any legal costs. So there's peace of mind there that if you work with a SafeRec certified payroll company, there's going to be a monthly report that your clients get, and HMRC can have a copy of an insurance policy that will cover any costs if there is any investigation. So I think that's going to be key in these legislation changes. So yeah, in summary, the upcoming legislation is a huge piece of legislation, because it, as I said right at the start, it puts your business at risk, and the potential criminal prosecution makes this one that agencies just can't ignore. We've been crying out for this for years, to say we need this sector to be regulated. So HMRC have finally listened. AG Payroll, we're going to be in a good place come April 2026, along with everyone else who works with an accredited payroll company. So yeah, thanks for your time. What I'm looking at doing is, there'll be a lot of people in here that I've mentioned a lot of things around processes and compliance and things like that. So I'm happy to give anyone that's on this call a complimentary consultation. Should take around half an hour, 40 minutes, but I'll look at the payroll compliance review of the companies you're using at the moment. I'll do some due diligence. I can give you a compliance questionnaire that you can send out to payroll companies that you're working with. And I'll also give you a compliance process guide, which will give you advice on how to demonstrate to HMRC that you're fully compliant if they do come and ask the question. That's my contact details, and that's some details around that LinkedIn group that I spoke about, the Recruitment Insight and Trends on LinkedIn. So make sure you follow that, because that'll give any updates on the Employment Rights Bill and also the umbrella legislation changes. So thanks for your time. I think Marlene's got some questions here.
Yeah, so we had a few questions that were sent in to us before the webinar. So one of the first ones that we have from Derek Allen at Booth Welsh is, why don't I just bring all the workers into my agency, PAYE?
Yeah, I get that. I get that quite a lot. But what I always say to agencies is that recruitment agencies specialise in recruitment. Payroll companies specialise in payroll. So recruitment companies can just continue to do what they do well and concentrate on the recruitment side of things. If an agency decided to pull all their contractors in PAYE, then you're going to have to increase the number of people in your payroll team. You're going to have to get new payroll software. You're going to have to take out new insurances. Umbrella companies take away all that admin side and also the risk as well. Also, contractors like being paid umbrella because there's lots of benefits. They get like continuous employment, so it helps them with their mortgages and loans, etc. They get lots of perks and discounts. So a lot of workers like being paid umbrella. But also that part that I mentioned around, if an agency doesn't use an umbrella company, under the new legislation, it's the agency and the end client that's going to be liable for any unpaid tax. I think you're going to get a lot of clients that are going to push agencies and ask them to use umbrella companies, because basically it'll take the risk away from the end client. So I think it'll go the other way. I think there will be more use of umbrella companies rather than less use under this legislation.
Mark Crilly at MPC Resourcing also wondered if the legislation would be delayed.
No. The Employment Rights Bill is going to be, we don't know a certain date, but that's going to be coming in at the end. They said it'll be announced, given royal assent at the end of 2025, and they've already set out that timeline, which I showed you in the slides. And the umbrella legislation has been confirmed. It's definitely coming in. That was announced on the 21st of July that it's coming in next April. So no is the short answer on that.
Fraser VTech from Construction and Civils was wondering if you see clients or MSPs preventing the use of umbrella companies moving forward.
No, again, it goes back to my first answer on that question. I think an MSP or a neutral vendor, well, their job is to protect the end client. So if they pay the workers PAYE through the agency, it's the neutral vendor and the client, the end client, that's on the hook for the unpaid tax. But if you put an umbrella company in that chain, it's the neutral vendor and the umbrella company that's on the hook. So I think there'll be more master vendors or neutral vendors that will be pushing agencies to use umbrella companies rather than the other way. Yeah.
And from our attendees today, Lucy Edgar was wondering if you think that umbrella companies will charge more as they will be doing more compliance and taking on more risk.
Yeah, we'll charge loads. Price is going to increase. I'm kidding. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that's a good umbrella company should do most of this at the moment. I don't think there'll be any significant changes in what we charge our clients, because again, anybody that's FCSA, SafeRec, or Professional Passport should be doing all of this just now. So no, I don't think there will be a massive increase in the charges to the contractors.
And speaking of charges, Clive is wondering that if clients insist that we move PAYE from in-house to payroll company, that will increase the cost to the client.
I would need to know a bit more on that. That doesn't necessarily, the cost to the client should always be the same whether you're using a payroll company or not using a payroll company. if an agency is paying the workers agency PAYE, it just means that the agency are responsible for all the employment costs, the employer's NI, the holiday pay, the pension, etc. If the umbrella company is involved, then the employment costs are effectively passed on to the umbrella company for us to pay that on their behalf. So I don't think, I need to know more context around what he means by that, but on the face of it, it just looks, there won't be any increase in the cost to the client, because the costs are the same. The employment costs are either paid by added onto the agency PAYE rate, or it's pulled into the umbrella PAYE rate.
And lastly, from Ginny, where does IR35 fit with all of this?
It doesn't. IR35 is relevant to limited company contractors. So the legislation, IR35 was the piece of legislation that was brought in for limited company contractors to make sure that they were not disguised employees. This legislation is more for umbrella and agency PAYE workers, who are all effectively inside IR35. But again, anybody that's outside IR35, to get them outside of IR, to ensure they're fully compliant with outside of IR35, you would have to look at the CESS tool. You'd have to look at somebody like Kingsbridge to ensure that they're outside of IR35. But this legislation is more to deal with workers who are inside IR35, who are umbrella workers or agency PAYE workers, and it's more about getting the relevant taxes paid to HMRC.
And that was all the questions for today, Chris.
Okay, well, if there is any other questions, then feel free to reach out to me. So my details are on the screen just now. Please follow me on LinkedIn. Maybe not questions just now, but if there's questions as we go along, then feel free again just to reach out, and I'm more than happy to help.